And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. Now, the title of this video, it is not clickbait, whether you might think it is or not. There is actually big news that's going to happen on this channel. And in fact, that big news is going to happen tomorrow. So, if you haven't seen, I've already scheduled the monthly podcast with myself and Rattle. Now, I've talked about this on other lives. Cool Trainer Ryan, although I wish he would be able to join us, he's not going to be able to. So, it's going to be me and Rattle with the podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. You know, I looked, the last time we had a podcast was May 20th of 2023. And I've had, there's been something in my life missing. And the thing that's really been missing in my life is that podcast, because I am very, very grateful and I'm very, very lucky. And I'm very, very just overwhelmed with joy that I have an ability in this hobby to not just do this Pokemon journey on my own, but to do this Pokemon journey with other people, whether it's the people in the chat, whether it's the people at home watching this video. But I also get to enjoy this Pokemon journey with my best friends in the hobby, and Rattle's one of my best friends, and I know it's going to be fun. It's, like I said, it's something that I've been missing, and I'm extremely looking forward to it. So, originally, for our first episode, we were going to have a third on who's going to be a special guest, and me and Rattle discussed it, and we said, you know what? One, it didn't really work out with that person's schedule was the first thing. But the second thing is, we haven't done a podcast together in so long. Let's have the first podcast be just me and him. So we'll kind of shake off the cobwebs, and it'll just be a, hey, what have you been up to in the last 8 months type of video. Now, I've seen Rattle at Charlotte Collecticon, and we've talked, but there's been a lot of big news that has happened, especially the big news that Rattle has broke in the last 8 months. You know, the Blake Break stuff, the Sean Bassett stuff. There are so many things that Rattle has done in the last 8 months that I feel it's only justifiable to just have the two of us on the first episode, and then every month going forward, we'll probably have a third guest, like a rotating third host, and we have some pretty awesome people, you know, like with people in mind that we want to have as those rotating third guests. So it's going to be big. And I think that the hobby as a whole enjoys the podcast. I know I enjoy it. So hopefully all you guys at home do too. So that's the big news that's going to happen tomorrow. So there is a link down in the description of this video if you want to click on that link and, you know, put a reminder so you know when we go live at 9 p.m. Or if you just go down in the comments of this video, as soon as this live is over, I'm also going to pin a comment that's going to have a link to that video. And it's going to be fun. It's a long time, 8 months. And there are some real bright spots for me in this hobby as a whole, and just real bright spots for this channel, and the podcast is definitely one of them. So I hope you guys are excited. I'm excited to bring it back. It might not be exactly the same, but we're going to do our best to still bring that entertainment value. So on today's video, I wanted to talk about somebody who put a comment on my last video. So real quick shout out to Chance Watson. I pinned the comment on my last video, and he said, because one of the things I mentioned on my last video was I talked about one of the things that Pokemon, and especially English Pokemon, was robbed of is we never got that Master Ball chase from Pokemon 151. And he brought up like a great hypothetical of what Pokemon could do, because one of the things I mentioned was I just don't see Pokemon being able to release a set that has Master Balls that would have the same feel to it as Pokemon 151 did. I was like, when you think about, you know, a Master Ball type chase, you can't match it any better with a set better than 151. And then Chance Watson, he put in the comments, he said, all Pokemon has to do is just make a dark Pokemon set. And as soon as I read that, I was like, yes. If Pokemon makes another dark Pokemon set, instant banger. And then you just add Master Ball reverses as the chase. Well, like one per booster box to a set like that, especially if you make it a main expansion. Dark Pokemon back at, I mean, when you think about some of the people in this hobby's favorite sets, there's a lot of sets get brought up, and you always have the obvious, like your base set and stuff, but then when you're still talking WotC, a lot of people say Team Rocket is one of their favorite sets just because, you know, that introduction to dark Pokemon. But then when you get into the Nintendo timeline, you start diving down the rabbit hole a little bit, and you really start to enjoy the artworks. A lot of people say Team Rocket Returns is their favorite set of all time because they just think of that awesome, you know, dark Pokemon artwork. Shout out to Saul. I appreciate the channel membership. Appreciate you joining, bud. But a lot of people love those dark Pokemon. And there are so many good dark like artworks that exist. And one of the things that I hope Pokemon could start leaning towards a little bit is a little bit more towards that older age demographic. And by leaning towards that older age demographic, because I think a lot of the people in the hobby right now, while there are a lot of kids, there's a lot of adults and they like more like that adult theme now. But that's the thing, dark Pokemon is not a new thing. I just told you that. You had it in Team Rocket. You know, you had your one-offs with the Dark Celebi and Hidden Legends, and you had your EX Team Rocket Returns, and you had the best of with like the Dark Ivysaur and the Dark Venusaur, especially shout out to the Winter Stamp one. And then even in Pokemon just as a whole, like even more call it the darker sides of Pokemon, those cards always do extremely well. And what I mean by that is a card that comes to the top of my head when I say cards that lean towards the darker side is like the Armored Mewtwo card. Obviously, in English, we saw it as a promo. It came in the tins. You know, there was the all the Japanese Armored Mewtwo's that exist, all the Korean Armored Mewtwo's that exist. But that is more of a darker feel to Mewtwo, which Mewtwo as a whole is already a pretty dark character when you think about it. But now you got Pokemon leaning towards a dark Pokemon with Armored Mewtwo, but even, you know, a card that has like more sinister and darker undertones to it is one of a lot of people's favorite card when you're thinking about Mewtwo is you think of just the Mewtube. Yes, the Mewtube, Tube, from Shining Legends. And that card, you know, it has dark undertones to it because that Mewtube in the test tube is like one of the saddest stories in Pokemon, you know. The DNA of Mew was harvested, and then Team Rocket built this Mewtwo to become this ultimate Pokemon and to use it as a weapon, and therefore, like, the Armored Mewtwo was what grew out of that. But, I mean, that is a dark undertone story, and well, especially when you talk about Shining Legends, especially when you talk about Mewtwo artworks, the Mewtwo always gets brought up in people's conversations. So I think people they gravitate a little bit more towards those darker Pokemon. And even the one that I made as just the thumbnail, like the background is the Team Rocket Zapdos and the Articuno and the Moltres. Like dark Pokemon, they hit a little bit different. So if you had a set that was just dark Pokemon and and then you brought back that Master Ball Reverse Hollow Chase, I think that would be a perfect set to couple with that. So when people say, you know, what can Pokemon do? As soon as Chance Watson wrote that comment, I was like, dude's on to something. Like, that will be an absolute banger of a set, Dark Pokemon. And then especially with that Master Ball Reverse Chase, if they ever bring it. And I think it will just be huge for this hobby. And I think people are waiting for that big, like, standout set. Now, 151 is doing really well as a standout set. But like I said, we just didn't get that Master Ball Chase, and I talked about it in yesterday's video. So today is the weekly live. So if you guys have any comments, feel free to put them in the chat because we'll be talking about a lot of those things. But so write your questions now if you have any. And if you guys don't know, if you're watching this after the fact, every every Thursday night at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I always have my PK Weekly Live. We're just going to rant about anything, whatever the chat is thinking of. But I just like randomly was having some thoughts today, and one of the thoughts I thought of was, you know, for some of the bigger sellers in the hobby, and so bigger sellers I'm talking, sure we'll lump Dan Ketchum Collectibles into it, and, you know, like your Rusty TCA Gamins. And then I was wondering to myself, I was like, what would be the buyout price to just acquire their, call it, you know, just acquire their business. So in order to acquire their business would mean you would acquire all their inventory, everything they have. Personal collection items, from personal collection to everything that's for sale and everything in between. You acquire 100% of their inventory. Then you acquire all their eBay like pages, all their distribution, all that stuff. Now, I'm not going to play the game of, yeah, you can't transfer over, you know, your distribution if you have distribution. I don't care. This is a hypothetical thing. Like, I don't need semantics in a hypothetical situation. So how much would that price be? But then, more importantly, not just how much would that price be to buy out their entire inventory and buy out their entire business. The caveat to that would be, if they were to sell, they would need to sign a 3-year non-compete clause, because I think a lot of people, if you were to say to like a Rusty or a Dan and be like, hey, I'm going to throw a number out there for you and I'm going to buy your entire business, I'm going to buy 100% of your inventory and you're going to be left with nothing. I think both of their answers immediately back would be, yeah, well, I would take all the money and I still feel like I could just rebuild my business. I don't think it would be hard because they have all the relationships and they understand the hobby and they understand everything in between. That's why that 3-year non-compete clause would be so interesting if they had to sign it, because then for the next 3 years, while they could still in theory be using whatever capital they got to get that buyout for their entire business and collection and eBays and relationships with distribution and stuff and all that, like they would lose all that, but in the 3 years timeline they could still be acquiring stuff if they wanted. They just wouldn't be able to compete at all, and to compete would mean selling product. So that means creating a new eBay account, creating a new rip and ship, just any way that they would be in competition to their old former business. So that hypothetical 3-year non-compete clause. And I just thought about that and I was like, man, I would really like to see like Dan or Rusty just talk about that. Like, what would it take? I mean, it would be in the millions, right? So Rusty, obviously, I mean, if you haven't watched Rusty's top 10 most expensive, I forget the exact name of his video, but Rusty's top 10 like personal collection items, and he shows all the prices for all those stuff, and it's far from just a top 10. There's a lot of cards in between there, and then at the very end he showcased the pre-release Raichu, which just the pre-release Raichu. I know he hasn't publicly said what he purchased that for, and to be completely honest with you, 100% transparency, I don't know what Rusty paid for that pre-release Raichu. And one, I don't know if Rusty would tell me even if I reached out to him. But number two, I kind of don't want to know because I would rather just speculate on a card like that. But even that pre-release Raichu, I've talked about on previous lives, like if you can have an Illustrator Pikachu and a PSA 9 sell for $475,000 and ignoring Ken Golden's private $2 million sales, I think that pre-release Raichu is valued greater than an Illustrator Pikachu. So that means, in my opinion, pre-release Raichu is valued at over $500,000. And I've talked about it before. Rusty's pre-release Raichu, while it is on the lower side of the grade, it's the 5.5 and not the 8. Rusty's pre-release Raichu is the real pre-release Raichu. It has all the backstory to it, has all the provenance, has everything that I care about in that pre-release Raichu. So the value I assign to his Raichu, even though it's a 5.5, anybody that would be a buyer of that card, I do also believe would value, the backstory of that card opposed to the condition of the other card. So Rusty actually has the more valuable of the two cards. And in fact, I don't think that there are really any examples of any cards that exist in this hobby that have that going for it, where the lower grade copy of a card would have the higher premium to a card. And I think the only example of a card like that exists is that, in fact, that pre-release Raichu. I do not believe that any other cards can like buck the trend of the higher grade sells for a premium. I think there's only one card in this entire hobby that would like kind of break that rule, and I think it's a pre-release Raichu. So if Rusty has the more expensive of the two cards, and I think it's worth more than a PSA 9 Illustrator Pikachu, I'm curious, like, what would be the price of that if we sold it at, or if we ever saw it go up to auction? Now, the problem is it'd just be like the buyer pool. I mean, a card like that at auction, that's not really a card I would ever want to auction. That is a card that you would sit on and you wait for the person to come up and give you like you can't say no offer. You got to wait for the buyer, like a Post Malone. Because, when I say like a Post Malone, I'm talking about a card that has all the provenance, has all that, excitement behind it. But at the same time, you need that special buyer, and he's got to have deep pockets. It's just like the Lord of the Ring 1/1 card. There was really, in my opinion, there's only one buyer of that card for $2.8 million. Now, I think there's a ton of buyers for that card for less than that. But for that higher price point, that 2.8 million that Post Malone paid, to be honest with you, I think there's only one buyer at that price point. And it's the same way as like the Illustrator Pikachu and that PSA 10. Even though it's a fake sale at this point, in my opinion, it's a fake sale because it's not a real Guinness Book of World Record. Like, obviously there was a lot of trade that was involved in there, and then the price of what he traded, he was able to assign a value to it. That value isn't totally like inflated, but still, even to say that that card is $5.25 million or whatever Logan Paul allegedly paid for it, you know what I mean. It's, in my opinion, it's not a true price. But if you got that card as a quote unquote holy grail, and think about how many Illustrator Pikachus exist, it's like every day. It feels like maybe every day is an exaggeration, obviously, but it feels like every day a new Illustrator Pikachu works its way out of the woodwork. I don't know how they keep popping up. I think, for a while, like, I mean, the numbers for Illustrator Pikachus have changed so much for how many exist, from 6 to 8 to the number everyone settled on was 39 to at this point where we're going to blow past that 39 number. And, probably more realistically, you probably had an entire sheet of, you know, Illustrator Pikachu, so probably more realistically, you're looking at, well, this is a thing too. Japanese original base set sheets were way smaller than English sheets, which were 99 cards. So, but either way, there's way more than, there's probably multiple sheets of Illustrator Pikachus printed at this point. Because just the fact of how we keep seeing these things come out, and they're not just coming out people cracking already graded copies and then trying to resubmit them and get higher grades. Like, that's not the thing we're seeing. We're just seeing new raw copies keep hitting the market. And recently, just within, I mean, obviously we're into January of 2024, but still within the last couple month timeline, we've seen 3 that I know of came to market like real quick. You got the John Pokemon Radar one that hit the CGC 10 and all the drama that followed that one. But right before that, the quote unquote $2 million private sale, and then the $475,000 one that I just mentioned, those certs were back to back certs, meaning somebody had 2 copies. They graded 2 copies at the same time, and they both hit 9s. Like, that's in a couple months. We've seen 3 copies, and not just 3 copies. 3 copies in near mint condition. So 2 PSA 9, contenders, and then 1 CGC. I guess they gave it a CGC 10, but it's probably more likely like a 7 or 8 maybe, like near mint copy. But still, we're still seeing these things come out. So who knows what the final number of Illustrator Pikachu will be. But I do like that hypothetical question of how much would it cost to buy people's collections, but then with that huge caveat on top is they have to sign a 3-year non-compete clause. So pretty much what that means is they just can't do anything in trading cards, because just like Dan, like, I'm sure he owns, probably not a lot of it, but he owns a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! He owns a little bit of, well, he doesn't own a little bit, he owns a lot of bit of MetaZoo. Way too much MetaZoo. Hell, I own a little bit of MetaZoo. And then I'm sure he has some Dragon Ball and some random TCG. So that just means anything trading cards, anything made out of cardboard, Dan is non-compete. Can't do anything in the hobby for 3 years. And he can't sell on eBay. He's already sold his account. He can't get distribution. He can't sell on anything. Like, what would that number be? Love to hear that number. Absolutely fascinating. But yeah, like I said, this is a weekly chat, so if you guys have any questions, I'm gonna scroll up right now. Feel free to ask them. So Dama said, Japanese does something new and innovative, English takes it away and introduces something worse. Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I'm an English fanboy through and through, but I'm not gonna lie when it comes to Japanese print quality of cards. Especially just I think of a product just as recently as the Pokemon TCG Classic Collection. In the Japanese version, I think it was like $249.99. In the English version, we got the more expensive version at MSRP of $399.99. So $150 more for our product. When you look at like the hollow borders for the Japanese Pokemon TCG Classic, it's like so much better than what we got for the English. And it is sad. And ours is a more premium product, at least from a price point, it's a more premium product. But yeah, like the actual hollow to it and the borders and everything, we got robbed. So yeah, I understand. What Dama is saying is Japanese does something new, and then English just takes it away by introducing something worse. And that's a perfect example of a super, super recent product. Like, we're not even talking a long time ago. That is something that's still very like in the now as a product like that. Pokey Snipe says Raichu memberships now, huh? I missed a lot of things. Yeah, if anybody wants to join the channel membership, 99 cents, knock yourself out. So He said, Catch 'em All Collectible says gifting still going for $3. Dang, I don't even have a $3 membership tier. I got to figure out what's going on there. Uh, Kai said Dan actually hates Pokemon. He told him via Skype. He said invest in 1992 Mario Prisms. Love it. Um, Dan said it would be a good time for him to pivot back to coins, be back during the next boom. I like it. So, it, Dan still just got that flipper boy mentality in him. So even though he might, be taken out of Pokemon, he would still be going back to coins. So I could, all right, fair enough. So so what Dan is saying is just that the Pokemon market is so easy that it's not just the Pokemon market that's easy. You could just go to any market, and as long as you have like the basic understandings of what it takes to, buy and sell, you can be successful at literally any market. So, okay, fair enough, Dan. Catch 'em All Collectible says Rusty's would be 8 figures, I'm sure. Mine would be low 7 figures. DM's open. Yeah, I could see. So I Rusty's already talked about it, just to like acquire his collection. Not even his business. Like the business is totally different. He said 10 million plus it would take just to acquire his business, to acquire his collection, but to add on his business, and it makes you wonder, right? Because and the reason why I really brought up this question was, how do you value businesses like this? Because a lot of these businesses are more or less, in a way, sole proprietorships. Sure, maybe they have some fancy legal, like Dan. I think his kids are on the payroll, and they, works into like some Roth IRA for when they get old. I think his kids are like, they're not even of working age yet, but you could do that tax accounting and stuff. But in reality, like his business is sole proprietorship, no matter what his S corp might tell you on paper. It's actually like in reality just a sole proprietorship. And then Rusty's business again is the same way. Like Rusty has some employees that work for him and help him out once in a while. I know his wife helps him out and his mother-in-law helps him out and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, even Rusty's business is a sole proprietorship. So you wonder, like, what is the value you place on their actual business? Removing all the cards and stuff, and it's like, these guys are running $1 million businesses, because when you, and this is all like comes down to acquisitions and stuff, and you look at like how companies are valued, and the crazy thing about like these companies is they, in a way, all Pokemon is they're kind of like service providers, like these Pokemon businesses, because in a way they're providing a service, like they're acting as a middleman. All they're doing as a service provider is they're acting as a middleman for a lot of this stuff. It's wild because they're not making anything. Like they're acting as a middleman for somebody that grades cards. They send them the PSA, they get the cards back. They're middlemaning that transaction between the grading card company, and then they're selling it on eBay. And they're doing the acquisition, they're grading, but they're still acting as like a service provider. They're providing a service at the end of the day. Or it's the same thing, even as crazy it is to say, as acquiring product from distribution and selling it. It's still providing, in a way, a service. And especially when you get into then the nuances of providing product and you start to look at like the pack breaker. I mean, no one needs somebody to open your packs for you. Like that is a service that is provided. It is a very weird like category that a lot of these Pokemon businesses kind of fall into. And like I said, they fall more into like the service provider and more into like the middleman, because you know Pokemon cards inherently are supposed to be, in a way, I mean, I guess it's in the name of the game, trading card game, but in a way, it's supposed to be an end consumer type product. Meaning, in theory, like Pokemon is selling somebody product, and then once they get that product, they open it up. In theory, that should be where it ends. And like I said, with that caveat of it's in the name of the game, trading card game, so people trade back and forth, but it's not really like a product designed to have this huge secondary market Like, the secondary market that exists is because we've created that secondary market, because we still want these cards, and like, because we want them, other people see that there's money to be made, or maybe that somebody is willing to pay more than they value a lot of these cards. So that secondary market, while it exists, it is not like the nature of Pokemon's business as a whole to say, let's create secondary markets for these products. The Pokemon business is supposed to be end consumer. So everybody who's interacting in that secondary market, is way more nuances to this conversation, but I think it's an interesting conversation. And there's people out there like Dan Ketchum Collectibles. I think this is right up his wheelhouse. I love to see him, tackle a little bit of this conversation a little bit more. Uh, Jake Smith said, Ketchum Collectibles, just DM Duo Virus. Be sure to click, yeah. So Pokédust Collectible says, PK, what if they made a Skyridge 2 like they did Base Set 2? So if you guys don't, first of all, I would love any like kind of reprint. And if, in a way, you can kind of say like you had original Team Rocket. Team Rocket Returns, was that technically like a Team Rocket 2? Sure, kinda. It was. It was just, same premise, Team Rocket, and then still with Dark Pokemon, just and introduced like EXs. But when Team Rocket came out, which was only the fourth set of WotC, so you had, or no, fifth set. So you had Base Set, Jungle, Fossil, and then Base Set 2, and then Team Rocket. So it's the fifth set of WotC. There were no EX cards at the time, so even though Team Rocket Returns has those. And then, yeah, I mean, and then even when, so now this is the huge caveat too, is even when Wizard of the Coast lost the rights to make Pokemon, there were two sets that were allegedly supposed to be down the pipeline. So your last three sets of Wizard of the Coast is Expedition Aquapolis Skyridge, but there were supposed to be two sets after that. One of those sets was Jamboree, and then there's a lot of like, cards people said, what might have been in Jamboree, what would Jamboree potentially have looked at. But the other set that a lot of people discussed was a Legendary Collection 2 set. So what would Legendary Collection 2 be? I mean, we all know what a Legendary Collection was, which, when you think about it, wasn't that, or like, that far before like Skyridge ended, because when I just said that the last three sets were Expedition Aquapolis Skyridge, the set right before Expedition was Legendary Collection. So Wizard of the Coast was already talking about doing a Legendary Collection 2 set. And then, I've seen like the conversations about like the different firework patterns and stuff, about some of like the best of games promos and stuff, and like, or maybe it wasn't really firework pattern. I've talked about this on a live in the past when Rusty was on. It's more like a Cosmos hollow feel to it. You see like the best of like the Hitmonchan is one, the Mewtwo is one, you got the Professor Elm is one. They have like that sort of Cosmos hollow pattern to it. And then the question was, would that Cosmos style like hollow pattern have been what we'd have seen in Legendary Collection 2 instead of like what we're used to with Legendary Collection with the firework pattern. Now, this is all speculation. Nobody knows this for sure. You're really going deep down the rabbit hole, and you start to bring up, Jamboree, and you start to bring up Legendary Collection 2 in lives. Like, you're probably going to lose a lot of people just saying the word Jamboree. There's probably a lot of people who don't even know that Jamboree was a set that was going to be released after Skyridge. So, and shout out to Nintendo for ruining that for everybody, just when we were trying to have a good time. But yeah, to answer your question, Pokédust, I would love to see a Skyridge too. Legend of Luke said, do you think Logan Paul is aware of the pre-release Raichu? If he finds out the Illustrated is no longer the rarest card, do you think he tried to acquire one? I don't know what Logan Paul's intentions in the Pokemon market really is. Like, if it's a pump and dump thing, like, I don't know. Like, it obviously seems like he's in it for a lot of money, but I don't know. Does Logan Paul care about Pokemon? At this point, I don't know. I haven't seen him really talk about it much, but I'm leaning towards maybe. But yeah, if Logan Paul found out that the pre-release Raichu, would he want to be a buyer of that? Yeah, I mean, if he could tell the story, right? Like, a lot of this stuff is just, it's storytelling. You got to push the story out. You got to make people aware of the cards like that. So, Hackzack said, PK, are you digging the temporal forces alt arts? To be honest with you, I've been kind of like staying away from the spoilers as of recently. So if the temporal forces alt arts have been released, there's none that I could really. Wait, maybe I did see some. Let me know, like, trying to think. Maybe I did see some of the spoilers, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. So am I digging them? Can't tell you because I can't think of any of them. Um, Science Guy 87 said they could release a Heart Gold Soul Silver style set and make the Paradox Pokemon the legendary cards. Interesting. Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, this is the thing, like legendary cards, same thing with horizontal cards are not like a lot of people's fan favorite cards. And if anybody doesn't know what a legend, I don't know if I have any legendary cards in front of me. But what legendary cards are, they're two pieces that stick together, and like they make a scene. So Heart Gold Soul Silver base had the Lugia and the Ho-Ho, and then the later Heart Gold Soul Silver sets, there's like the Rayquaza one. There's a bunch of good ones, but they make an artwork, and the problem is oh, I do have one. So this is a Rayquaza Deoxys. So this is the bottom half of the card. I don't have a top half in front of me, sorry, but like this is the bottom half, and then so this is the Deoxys, and then on the top half is a Rayquaza, and then they sit together and they make a scene. The only problem with these legend cards is that they're tough to binder, because when you put them in a binder, you can't really insert cards horizontal, so you have to put them in how you normally would in a binder. So the artworks are already, you're always looking at the artwork from the side when you're looking at legend cards, and then also the same way as when you grade these cards. Then you got two PSA slabs and you're trying to stick two slabs on top of each other like this, and then kind of look at the artwork. You don't get that full connection to them, and I just don't think people love horizontal cards that much. Now if they can, and then yeah, while I love the thought of legend cards, it's just, I don't know, I just don't think people like them that much. And very recently, just in the last couple of years, you think about like break cards. Break cards, a lot of people, when they see break cards, they don't enjoy them just because of that sheer horizontal factor to it. Now you can say, well, what if they don't do them horizontal? Well, then that just brings you to like the V Union cards. All the V Union cards are, in a way, is legendary cards. So when you look at cards like that and you say, do people really care about the V Union cards? And the answer is like, I mean, people enjoy them. Like there was the Pikachu V Union box, which was an awesome. It had, what was it, like I can't remember the exact number, but like 99 different Pikachus, each Pikachu drawn by a different artist. If Namp90's in here, he'll let you know how many Pikachus are in that V Union Pikachu card. But it is cool, like every single Pikachu is done by a different artist. Like it is beautiful artwork, but even that, like I don't think people just care enough about building stuff. So when people say, if they released a Heart Gold Soul Silver style set and made a Paradox Pokemon legendary card, like, because the legendary cards, I don't know. Now, when you say Heart Gold Soul Silver style set and you're just talking like primes, I don't know. I just don't know if primes are a big enough chase for people right now. So, but I mean, all the Heart Gold Soul Silver sets are great sets. Let's see. So last pack Magikarp said, what's the big news? I just got here. So big news is tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the podcast with Rattle and myself comes back. That is the big news. So that is, very happy for that. Open Mango says, have you been keeping up with the MetaZoo drama and people hating on Rudy and the MetaZoo company? Also, thoughts on One Piece and Lorcana. So, and you see how nobody ever mentioned Sorcery? I'm really happy I sold my Alpha Sorcery booster box case, because I only ever see people talk about One Piece. I only see people talk about Lorcana. Now, I also had a One Piece Blue Bottom booster box. I've bought one of every single of the One Piece expansions except for the most recent one. I think it's OP5, or maybe that's still pre-release, but either way, the pre-order prices are crazy, so I haven't really touched those. OP4, I was picking up at, I think I picked them up at $89 from P Football P. If those are the yellow boxes, trust me, I struggle with my names of the sets, but I pick up like just one of each. And One Piece seems like it's got a lot of hype behind it. I was very lucky. I picked up my One Piece Blue Bottom box in December of 2021, and shout out to Squeaks Game World. So when Squeaks Game World and Pokemon Raiders still had their podcast series, Squeaks talked about One Piece like really hard in one of the episodes, and I feel like Squeaks knows a ton about TCGs, and I said, okay, I don't know anything about One Piece, but I'm going to take Squeaks' word for it. So I kept a little bit of an eye on that One Piece market, and then recently I was able to sell my Blue Bottom One Piece box because the price just got way too crazy. I think I don't quote me on this, but I want to say I spent 130 on my original Romance Dawn One Piece booster box. Blue Bottom just happened to be first print. Didn't know at the time that the first print was going to be any rarer than any of the the white bottom boxes, and got super lucky. I saw what the prices went to, $1,000 plus, and I said, okay, time to sell this baby. And then as for Disney Lorcana, I went on Peak.Choose channel. There was an old live where we all went on Peak.Choose channel. We talked about Lorcana, and I said the exact way Lorcana was going to play out. At the very beginning, Lorcana was going to go absolutely crazy, but Ravensburger had already made it very clear at that time that Lorcana was going to be printed to the ground and that it was not going to be a collectible thing and that it was just going to be keep printing it until people stop buying this type thing. And so, I don't know. My problem with One Piece right now is while prices are great, we haven't seen major reprints of One Piece. And I just don't know the true strength of the One Piece market. People seem to be interested in it, like it's got a lot of playability to it, but I'm hearing a lot of people talk about One Piece like they used to talk about MetaZoo. If you know me, I was a MetaZoo hater from day one. Some of my more epic lives, I think the first or second time Dan Ketchumall Collectibles ever came on my channel, me and him had like one of the more longer dragged on MetaZoo debates where I talked about why I thought MetaZoo was not going to be a strong card game, why I did not think it was going to last, and then Dan was obviously very bullish on MetaZoo, very positive on MetaZoo. Now I would be interested to go back and watch that live and see, fast forward 2 years later, 3 years later, and see who was right in that conversation. I'm going to lean towards I was probably right without actually listening to that, but and I would be curious if a lot of the points I was saying, if a lot of that stuff ended up playing through. But one of the things about MetaZoo that was always my worry was that I just felt that too many people were jumping into MetaZoo for the investability of it. And because at the time we were seeing what Kickstarter booster boxes were doing, we were seeing confirmed sales of MetaZoo Kickstarter booster boxes for greater than $12,000. I mean, those things have dropped so drastically at this point. But even at the time, everybody was saying to me, no, MetaZoo isn't just all these investor boys, it's the playability. And then you had people like Basic Trainer. Basic Trainer's probably been one of the guests that have been on my channel more than anybody else, and Basic Trainer swore how good the MetaZoo playability was and how many different caster cups Basic went to and how many times he came on my channel right after he was at major events. Shout out to Ivy, who was at one point Queen MetaZoo. Ivy was on my channel for an interview way before she ever even dabbled in MetaZoo. She came on and she was still more or less known just from TikTok and the Washing Machine Charizard. And then shout out to IVR, all the crazy awesome things she's doing in Pokemon right now. Especially if you guys live in Vegas, check out the TCG Garage. The fact she's doing big things in this hobby right now. First time I ever met her in person was at the Leonhardt pop-up shop, and then but all these people swore about how good the MetaZoo playability was. So I'm just too nervous that is the One Piece market truly strong enough to see reprints, or is the excuse me, I hope I'm not saying MetaZoo. Is the One Piece market strong enough for reprints, and is the One Piece market strong enough to not have everything 2x overnight right at release? That's the thing I'm just nervous about. And because I listen and I read and I just see the way people are interacting with One Piece right now, and I think that, and it's the same argument I had at Pokemon. Everybody used to say, depending on what video you watch and depending on who the person is, some people are like, PK's way too bullish on modern Pokemon, but then there's other people said PK hated modern Pokemon, and especially during that Sword and Shield timeline, I never hated Pokemon. Like, for anybody to think I hated modern Pokemon is such a farce of a comment. But the problem was people were seeing the way I was talking about modern Pokemon because I was saying, listen, the prices this modern stuff is selling at is not sustainable. And my channel came out of that crazy like hype period. Examples being Vivid Voltage Booster Box selling for $280. I said these prices are not sustainable. Battle Styles, like right after release, booster boxes selling for $160 for Battle Styles. Shining Fates, the set right after Battle Styles, ETBs selling for 120, 130. I was saying these prices are not sustainable. Like, this is early product onto the market, and then everybody just took that as PK hates modern Pokemon. Do you hear the way he's talking about he's talking about Vivid Voltage? Do you see how he's talking about Sword and Shield? Do you see how he's talking about Shining Fates? All these sets are getting huge premiums because you know what? When I said Vivid Voltage was overvalued at 200, guess what? You know how I look stupid when Vivid Voltage goes up to $280. But I was like, whoa, PK. You said Vivid Voltage was overvalued at 200, and I'm like, it was. Well, you must feel pretty stupid because look, now these booster boxes are selling for $280. And you know what? At the time, you don't have any rebuttal to that. All you can say is, wait, just wait and see. Wait until this shit gets reprinted. And it's the same conversation as you have with something like One Piece, where now you say, wait for the reprints of One Piece, and then everybody just says it. See that? PK hates One Piece. And it's like, it's the same conversation. It's not about hating anything. It's just nervous about how reprints and how supply is going to affect this market. Because especially One Piece, I think we are in the niches. When you talk about One Piece, everybody in this live is going to know what that is. But for the majority of the world, like, go up to just any random person on the side of the road and say to them, be like, do you know what Pokemon is? They'll probably say yes. Then ask, do you know what Magic the Gathering is? And then you probably have a 50-50 shot that they're going to know what Magic the Gathering is. And then ask if they know what One Piece is. Then you're probably not going to have a 50-50 shot. And then you're probably going to start getting into 1 out of every 60, 1 out of every 70 people are going to know what One Piece is. So, you know, how big is that actual collector base? And one of the things Bandai is really good at is they have a really, really shitty track record of just destroying card games. A lot of people out there love Dragon Ball, especially when you talk about like great animes, great TV shows. A lot of people love Dragon Ball. A lot of people still talk about Dragon Ball Super, like Super, the card game. But Bandai said, oh, you want to see us destroy a card game? Here. Hold my beer. We'll show you how to do it. Now, the problem is a lot of people that are in that One Piece, I don't think they even like understand what it can be to have poor management of a card game, especially if they're coming from Pokemon. Because if you look at what Pokemon does, Pokemon International as a company, Pokemon is very, very good at navigating markets. I mean, we're seeing it happen in real time. Like, they definitely struggled for a little while getting demand or meeting demand and getting supply out there. But Pokemon, when it comes to the actual like management of products and releases and reprints, we are very spoiled in how good Pokemon handles stuff. Now, Pokemon messes up here and there, and then when they do mess up, we talk about it, and it makes great content. But as a whole, Pokemon has very little misses, meaning most of their hits are wins. So that's my fear, is how One Piece could roll out, is that if you start to see, you know, products hit at release, and then they don't 2x overnight, or you don't get a boost. I mean, what's the MSRP of a One Piece booster box in reality? It's like $80 or $90, but I think they're selling right now pretty strongly at like $140 at release for a lot of these sets, $130. So that is already huge price points for people with distribution. So then you got people with distribution. It's gonna be the same thing as Pokemon, because, you know, when people were asking, they were like, okay, they were just saying, how many booster boxes of Pokemon do you want? And they were like, I want 1,000 booster boxes. And they're like, in reality, I'll probably get 200 of them. So when I get the 200 booster boxes, that's fine, because plenty of people will buy them. It's the same thing going on with One Piece right now. Distribution's asking, how many, you know, booster boxes of One Piece do you want? And people are going, I want 1,000. It's exactly what happened in Pokemon in 2020. It's the same thing currently happening in One Piece. It's just, how much can I get from my distribution? If they give me 1,000 boxes, I will take 1,000 boxes because of how strong the market is. But they're not going to give me 1,000 boxes. They're going to give me 2 cases. So I'm just going to take whatever I can get. Rewind to Pokemon in November 2020, February 2021. It's like, my distribution is not going to give me everything I want. I'm just going to take whatever I want. And then eventually you get to the point where, as I walk through the valley of the $79.95 booster box, I fear no evil, and you have the huge dumps of Chill and Rain and Battle Styles and Fusion Strike and Evolving Skies. Now, Pokemon was able to claw its way out of that. And the reason why I was able to claw its way out of that is because the Pokemon hobby is strong. It's one strong bitch. That's a big bitch. That's a strong bitch. Pokemon could claw its way out of it. I just don't know if One Piece has what it takes to crawl its way out of something like that. So, that is where I stand on One Piece. Now, we'll see. I'm just sitting back and waiting. I'm not really like interacting in that One Piece market right now because I just think it's too speculative at this point. But back to the MetaZoo drama. Oh yeah, I'm keeping up with it. Yum 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 yum. Love me some MetaZoo content. You're saying, and people hating on Rudy and the MetaZoo company. Listen, people hate on Rudy all the time. What are they mad at Rudy this time for? Rudy says, I feel like people are always mad at Rudy. Rudy has a proven track record of, I've watched a lot of Rudy's videos, and Rudy is a seller of product. That's it. Like, he has his Patreon, and he sells product. He's in the business of making money in cardboard. And I think that is probably hard for a lot of people to maybe grasp. So if Rudy sees like a great opportunity to just do what he does, which is make money, I think he's going to take advantage of it. So when you talk about MetaZoo and you talk about Rudy, and maybe a lot of people are talking about like, the exclusive Rudy promos he got. Well, same thing with the Rudy promos. It's the same thing with Flesh and Blood. Can you hate a guy like Rudy that when somebody like MetaZoo comes up to him and they give him a golden ticket? Because that's what it was. Saying, hey, if you carry this MetaZoo stuff and you sell it to your Patreons, we're going to give you an exclusive promo. And I'm going to go on a limb and say, like, a lot of the Rudy promos are probably still some of the more expensive cards in MetaZoo when you start to ignore like all the Kickstarter MetaZoo. But when you just look at normal MetaZoo promos that were in a way mass produced, I'm sure the Rudy promos are still holding a premium in comparison to everything else. And when you say in comparison to everything else, you're talking an absolute dumpster fire. And that dumpster, that fire, is being fueled by just bulk MetaZoo cards. So can you hate a guy like Rudy when you got, Mike Waddell from MetaZoo walking up and being like, listen, man, we're going to give you all these promos, and these promos is going to be enough to sell this product because people like promos, man. So can you hate him for that? Like, I guess you can. I feel like hating Rudy is an easy thing, but what did he do wrong? Like, somebody handed him a golden ticket, and he said, they're like, hey, Rudy, you're in the business of selling cardboard. Here's some cardboard. You want to sell it? I probably just said yes to it. I tell you what, Pokemon came up to me tomorrow and was like, hey, PK, we're going to give you your own PK promo. And you could give away this promo if you sell some Pokemon product. Oh, you better bet your ass that promo would be moving, and I would be moving product at just some make-believe number. $1 bazillion, quadrillion dollars. You just buy some Paradox Rift booster box case and you get a PK promo limited to like 1 of 1,000 or whatever, like Rudy's MetaZoo promos were. And then, oh, by the way, you get to keep any shit that's left over. So not only do you get to sell all this product at a huge markup, you also get to keep your promos, which in theory are probably going to be worth thousands of dollars, because I think some of his promos actually like cracked above the $100 mark. So it's like, here's a bunch of free money, Rudy. And I remember when Rudy did some of his promos. I don't remember. It's the one that he burnt on the grill. I don't remember if that was Flesh and Blood or if that. I think that was Flesh and Blood and not MetaZoo. But how much did he sell those Rudy promos for? he sold them for either like, man, I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was like hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000. He must have made hundreds of thousands of dollars though off of that one promo. And you just think about this hobby as a whole, and it's like, what if somebody just gave you, like, what if somebody just handed you a stack of cards like this thick and was like, hey, by the way, this is your personal promo. Like, go make $100,000 and just selling this stack. And it's like, go. This is $100,000 for you. It's just wild to think about. Now, if people hate Rudy because of that, like, go for it, man. Makes sense. Just fine. Anybody could hate anybody for it. I don't hate Rudy. I mean, it's very Rudy's very transparent what he is. He is a businessman through and through. Like, that's all his channel talks about. I don't remember the last time Rudy's made a video not talking about the market, some TCG market, or the price, or the investability, or Amazon dumps, or price appreciation or price depreciation, or management from companies, or Hasbro stock. It's just that's all Rudy talks about, is just the dollars and cents, and extracting money out of this hobby. So the fact that people hate him for MetaZoo makes 100% like sense. Jacob E22 said, can you put a gray felt hat Pikachu hat and talk about how the new thousands of cards given the game stores will affect the market? I will give you an example. One of the cards that I said to buy a lot of was the Pikachu on the Ball promo. So Pikachu on the Ball promo, originally given out in the UK for like children's soccer leagues, and then it ended up being handed out at the store Game. Yes, that was the name of the store, GAME. Just like we have GameStop there, they have Game. And all you had to do was spend a minimum of $20, and you got one of those promos. And then the Pikachu on the Ball promos crushed that market. Those were cards that were selling at a time for greater than $500 per copy, because people thought they were going to be really rare. You still had like the Grookey, the Score Bunny, the Sobble, the Eevee had an on the Ball promo. I think there was 5 in total. And that Pikachu, the 5th one, was impossible to get. Everybody lost their mind because it was scarce and rare. And then, those promos got released at store, and it crashed the price. Now, will something happen similar to Pikachu in a gray felt hat promo? I mean, to be honest with you, the Pikachu on the Ball promo in price comparison for the raw copy was selling at a 3x multiple of what the Pikachu in a gray felt hat promo was. So, yes, I do think the prices are going to crash, to give you that very simple answer. Okay, Namp 90, I was wrong. So for the Pikachu V Union card, I said that there was 100 Pikachu, each one done by a different artist. Namp corrected me, said it was a 25th anniversary, so it had 25 different Pikachus, and each by a different artist. So I was wrong. Let's see. Cheval says, what's the big news? PK going full-time flipper too? No. Podcast coming back tomorrow. I can't do full-time flipper. I love my job too much. Weird, right? A lot of people hate their job. I love my job. I'm well compensated. I enjoy it. I worked really hard to get to where I am, and I have no reason to leave my job. And Pokemon for me is not a business. If anybody out there thinks Pokemon is my business, you are mistaken. Pokemon is a hobby for me. So I like to just keep Pokemon what it is, and a little side thing. And the money that I use in Pokemon, I don't ever have to live off that money. In a worst case scenario, which I would hope this never happens, but if Pokemon somehow left my life tomorrow, it doesn't affect anything, so it's not a business for me. I don't rely on Pokemon. Now, I think I rely on Pokemon for my sanity, because it's something that I really enjoy, and I think everybody needs a passion out there. So, that would be pretty shitty. Beavis Jones says, Bandai is terrible at supporting their TCGs. They will randomly kill off one piece at some point, and it'll be worth it. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how Bandai... I think the problem is, too, is this is a scary thing. When I've heard people, like, defend One Piece, they've also, in a way, defended Bandai, but I also don't think that they've ever interacted with Bandai TCGs, which is a scary thought. Like, imagine... Like, I'm not going to get in my CGC rant, but it's very similar. Like, sometimes people just really, really want to go the bat to these companies and go, it's going to be different this time. Yeah, they might have done all this bad stuff in the past and have this huge, long track record. But this time, it's going to be different. It's almost like when I hear some people talk about like the crypto shit coins and stuff, and like you see huge pump and dumps for these shit coins, and then you'll still like go and see some random comment where somebody's still pumping that shit coin because they're like, this time it's going to be different. And sometimes I feel like people talk about that like with Bandai, like they know what they're doing, and Bandai don't know what the fuck they're doing. So uh Blitz says, I hate One Piece simply for the fact that it's selling for more than Digimon. Fresh Stat said, Medizu art puke. I did see Medizu is even paying their artists right now. I think it was like 7 of their artists walked out of Medizu due to simply not getting paid, and talking about like the prices that the Medizu artists were getting paid, and it just kept dropping from set to set until eventually like there was some potential like conflict of interest. Like, so Medizu artists, they would get paid for like commission. So let's say a new Medizu expansion's coming out, and they would say, okay, we needed 20 cards from you. So they would make artworks for 20 different cards, and then Medizu would pay them a price for each of the 20 artworks that they produced. And then that would be like if they did like actual hand drawn, but then if they did more like did the artwork on a computer, they would get a little bit less. But either way, if they made 20 artworks, they get paid for 20. Then Medizu decided to change it and say, no, now even though we're requesting you to do 20 artworks, if we only accept 10 of those artworks, we're only going to pay for 10 of them. So even though you spent the time to create 20 artworks, we're not going to pay you for 20. So that really made a lot of the artists mad. But then the guy Mike Waddell stepped down as CEO of Medizu, and some other chode stepped in. I don't even know his name. We'll just call him Chody McChoderson and the Chody Bunch. Well, Mr. Chode came into Medizu and then was dating one of the artists. So one of the other ways that these artists would make money would be they would go to like collecticons or go to these different events and would be part of like the signing panels. And by being part of the signing panels, they would get paid to do that as well. But then Medizu said, no, any artist cannot just go to these signing panels. Now you have to be invited. Well, because Chody McChoderson and the Chody Bunch, the new CEO, was dating one of the artists who was a female, she was magically always invited to these like collecticon signing events, and all these other artists were always like kind of getting the push where she was allowed to go and these other artists were not allowed to go, and that was one of their income streams. And people think of artists and you think about like a Mishihiro Arita and you think like these guys are probably making a ton of money. And in reality, like what they're getting paid for their artworks are probably not that much. And when you look at their actual yearly salary when it comes to, making artworks and all the commissions, it's probably sub $50,000. Like it's not some crazy high number. So a lot of these artists are struggling just to get by. So that really pissed off a lot of the artists and what Medizu was doing, and they just said, guess what? Peace. We're out of here. So I have been following a little bit of that drama. It's interesting. And maybe I got a little bit of the information wrong, but I'm pretty good at like reciting information. Therefore, if you've ever seen me talk about Pokemon, like I do have a weird way to, compartmentalize information. So I think a lot of what I just said is pretty true about Medizu. So Cheval says, came in just to say hi to the number one mod in the game, Drew. Drew, we appreciate you, buddy. Drew is the absolute number one mod in the game. McNick says, One Piece is one of the most popular comics worldwide. Yes. And Hello Kitty is also one of the most popular franchises in history. Not just worldwide, just in the history of the world. And how did Hello Kitty work out for Medizu? Not that great. So, yes, while One Piece is the most popular comics in the world, I don't think that just gives it an automatic pass to be an amazing card game. Also is one of the number one comics in the history of the world? Marvel Comics. And you know what is some of the biggest blockbuster movies in the history of the world? Marvel Comics. Name me some Marvel TCGs. I got a couple right there in the back, some old ones. But there's definitely some of like the one-of-one Marvel cards that are still holding a premium, but Marvel TCGs as a whole, they don't do great. and they are the number one comic in history, Marvel Comics, with one of the biggest movie franchises in the world. So just the fact that One Piece is the number one comic, that alone isn't enough for me to just be like, I got to go all in on, One Piece TCG. The same way as when Marvel comes out with a new TCG, I don't just say, I'm going all in on Marvel because of how many comics has Spider-Man sold in the history of Spider-Man. What is it? Amazing Fantasy #1, is that the first Spider-Man? Or, X-Men, the original X-Men. It's just, it doesn't do it for me. Or it's not enough. It helps, but it's not enough. So Retro says One Piece is an anime, not just a card game. Biggest anime in the world. Yes, it is big. Jump to the bottom. People are saying 500 million copies of the best-selling manga. Yeah, double that of Naruto and Dragon Ball. Yes, I'm not saying that people don't know One Piece. I just think people are sometimes just. It's okay to just say, preach a little bit of caution. I'm still buying One Piece. It's the same way as people gave me shit. Like the same way people said I was negative on Pokemon, I have One Piece. I got One Piece right over there. I've showed One Piece in December. You can go back. I'll pull the clip of me when I bought One Piece, when nobody was talking about One Piece. This is the thing, too. Everyone's talking about One Piece because the prices are going up. When I showed my One Piece Blue Bottom booster box in December of 2021, nobody was talking about One Piece. In fact, I was one of the very first channels to even mention it. So, don't think I'm like a big hater all the time. Yes, Rattle Pokemon, the co-host of the podcast. He's in there. Rattle's letting everybody know the podcast is coming back. John Michael Garland said, I think it will take time with any card game in the market. It will slow in the years to come. There will always be debates in new products in the card game market. Yeah, and debates are healthy. Some people hate debates. Retrospect says, MetaZoo Mike, easily the most honorable CEO in any TCG company. Love that. Love that take. So Mark said, how do you feel about the Sorcery TCG PK? I backed the Kickstarter. I had an original case, so 6 booster boxes of the original Sorcery TCG. I had 2 of the pre-con decks, and then the free Kickstarter pack they sent. I sold everything last month. I did an in-person transaction. I drove to a store in Brooklyn, New York that was actively, in the market for Alpha Sorcery TCG. I think I was all in for between the cases and the pre-con decks, it was like $800 or something. I was all in, and it ended up selling for crazy multiples upon that. By the time I sold my booster boxes, each booster box was valued at over $1,000 a piece, and the pre-con decks were valued at over $400 a piece, and those I paid $50 a piece for. So my thoughts for Sorcery was, I didn't really see a lot of people talking about it. A lot of unrealized gains in this product. I'm just going to get rid of it and use that money for other stuff. Sometimes and sure, maybe a product like that's going to keep going up, but I just saw how much money was there, and I was like, okay, sometimes you just got to pull the trigger. So that was my feelings towards Sorcery, and I don't really know much about it other than that. So Catch 'em All Collectible says, I heard Rudy doesn't even buy his promos back. So, listen, I think I might have heard on Dan's last live. I was listening to it on 2x speed in my ear, but I think he said that he's going to be increasing the prices of his new Dan promos. And not only did he say he was going to be increasing the prices, I think he said that he would be buying back those promos at the newer, higher price. So, if that's the case, should we just buy out all the current Dan promos on his eBay store right now? If there's guaranteed to, if we buy them out for 20 and let's say he's now buying them back at $25, does that mean we're going to instantly make 25% on our promos? If that's the case, is that one of the easiest no-brainer plays in history? I might have misunderstood Dan, so if I didn't, then let's go buy out his promos and just wait for him to increase the price and then just mail them all back to him and be like, okay, I'll take my instant 20%, Dan. Thanks a lot. Or 25%, I should say, if he goes up to $25 each. Um, so Mobile Prodigy says I'm using my MetaZoo cards as extra padding, sandwiching them between my top loader for when I sell my raw Pokemon cards on TCG Play. I love it. It's just like the people that I'll get like just a regular non-priority mailbox, and then I open it up and they're using priority mail bubble mailers as the padding in there. And I know there's some people out there got those, and it's just like, first of all, it's hard enough to just get these bubble mailers from my post office. Like, they don't keep the priority mail bubble mailers out with like the rest of the flat rate boxes. You have to go to the counter and ask the person behind there, be like, hey, can I get some flat rate bubble mailers? And if they know you, they'll give you a decent pile of them. But like the fact that I see people using these as packing supplies, and then a lot of times I will get those UPS flat rate bubble mailers, and then when I have like a item that requires that sort of you know priority mail tracking, I will just reuse those bubble mailers. So I don't let them go to waste. I don't use them as like packing material. Please don't do that. Uh, so Navy 7 said, did you look into the 5% off eBay gift cards at Target with a red card? No, I have not. That is something that I totally spaced. I'm going to write a note right now to look into the Target red cards, because I don't know a lot about them, but I know they've been mentioned in the past. Red card. I'll look into that. Yes, sorry. Hackzack said, I wish instead of gold card secret rares, they would consider doing full arts of older cards. Example, that sweet Neo Espeon art as a full art special illustration. I mean, when you think about it, there have been a lot of cards that have been I mean, all the platinums, right? So, like Platinum Rise and Rivals has the reimagined Pikachu artwork, and then just Platinum has like the Scyther artwork was redone, the Hitmonchan was redone in the Platinum timeline. Like, there's been a lot of like base set reprints that they've done as secret rares. So taking older cards and just making them into secret rares, or even into Rise and Rivals, even like Black Star promos, like the Surfing Pikachu or the Flying Pikachu. Like, both those are made as secret rares. So yeah, no, I mean, I like the thought of that, as taking older cards and making them into secret rares. Now, the way you're saying is to expand those cards into full art cards, which then in a way just takes it one step forward, one step further. Yeah, and I like the thought of that too. Um, let's see. Catch 'em all collectible said, not every IP needs a TCG. Don't tell people that, Dan. We need. Listen, one of my favorite things in the world is dead TCGs. Speaking of dead TCGs, I think it's time. I need to start acquiring some positions in MetaZoo, because Wilderness booster boxes, $20, $25. I need to get myself some Wilderness booster boxes. I mean, now's the time, right? So buy dead TCGs. Hackzack said Marvel Snap is very interested in online TCG, and they make bank. I think I don't. Yeah, that's non-physical assets of no anything like that. Marvel Snap, I stay away from that. I need actual like physical cards in hand. The thought of just paying for pixels on your phone screen is not for me. Fresh Tat says Simpsons TCG. Fingers crossed. There's been a lot of Simpsons products in the past. One of my favorite is 1990 Simpsons. It came in the wax boxes, like those Ninja Turtle ones right there. They had the top scumming and stuff. There's been a lot of, and then I think in 2004 Simpsons came out with like another TCG. There's been a lot of Simpsons TCGs in the past. It's just when people think Simpsons, you don't think trading cards. So Skater Nesto said One Piece is better than those Pokemans. Yes. Uh, Fresh Tat says, what is One Piece doing different or better? Oh, wait, I jumped all the way to the bottom. I think I just, like, hopped in the middle. I don't know why it does this. Oh, wait, I don't think I did jump. Let's see. Did I jump all the way to the bottom? I don't even know where I'm at. Jesse, says, give me a Captain Underpants TCG. So, I don't know if I have it close. I don't think I have it close by. But I have, like, my original Captain Underpants book that I bought at the school book fair when I was in, I don't know, like second or third grade, and I thought it was the coolest thing. So, Now, does Captain Underpants need its own TCG? No, it does not. But that original book does slap. So, um, let's see. So JJ 1989 said, "How did MetaZoo do in the first year or two, and compare the Lorcana and One Piece?" MetaZoo in the first year did crazy stuff. When you talk about the original MetaZoo and you talk about the Kickstarter hype, I just told you. Like, so One Piece, blue bottom booster boxes, which are considered the first print, very low print runs, those booster boxes are selling between $1,000 to $1,500, which is a lot of money. MetaZoo Kickstarter booster boxes were selling for $12,000. That is a huge difference. Now, MetaZoo Kickstarter booster boxes only had print runs of 2,500, but still prices for that crazy. Then when you think about MetaZoo and you think about like the MetaZoo Rudy kits Rudy was doing, booster boxes were selling for crazy premiums, especially for that original like Cryptic Nation first edition MetaZoo. Crazy high prices in the first year. So, I mean, MetaZoo had a ton of demand. None of it made any sense to me. People were way too irrational. Then, when you start to look at the MetaZoo sample cards, so MetaZoo sample cards were originally sent out by Mike Waddell to like a lot of the, call it bigger Pokemon influencers. Like PokeRev got a bunch of it. PokeRev still has his just tucked away in a closet somewhere. But like he even sent a lot of this MetaZoo sample stuff to like TCA Gaming, and TCA ended up selling it for thousands of dollars to one of the guys in the chat, Dan Ketchmo Collectibles. How did that investment work out for you? But like all these sample cards and stuff that these Pokemon influencers were getting to just in a way like pump the MetaZoo and like to showcase the cards, and a lot of them who got this product never made a video, never talked about MetaZoo, never pumped these cards, but some of these sample cards were selling for thousands. So when you talk about sample cards selling for 1,000, then the way your question asks is, how does MetaZoo in the first year or two compare to Lorcana? Lorcana, you say, well, what did the quote-unquote sample cards for Lorcana do? Well, that was at I think it was a D12 event or D23, the Disney event, where the Lorcana sample cards were. And then everyone took those Lorcana sample cards, they grade them with PSA. They sold for thousands of dollars. So literally, like the Disney Lorcana sample cards that were at that D23 event, or D12, I forget the name, D23, I think it is. The D23 event played out exactly the same as the MetaZoo sample cards played out. Like the One Piece blue bottom booster box played out exactly the same as a Kickstarter booster box. Or if you want to say, okay, Kickstarter booster boxes played out a little bit more, well, let's say Cryptic First Nation. How did Cryptic Nation First Edition, how did that compare? And then you could even go, you keep compounding on it and say, well, let's just not just say Disney Lorcana. Let's not just say One Piece. Let's add in Flesh and Blood. Well, what did the Flesh and Blood, like real early Flesh and Blood first edition booster boxes do? I forget the exact Ravena Remastered or what? No, that's One Piece, or Magic got Flesh and Blood. I'm forgetting the name of the first edition, the first set of Flesh and Blood. But either way, that very first edition set of Flesh and Blood start to compare. Well, maybe Flesh and Blood never had like sample cards and maybe never had those D23 cards, right? But what did Flesh and Blood first edition Monarch, was it Monarch? Yeah. So Flesh and Blood Monarch first edition was, I think, the first ever set. I think it's finally coming to me. Let me know down in the chat if I'm right. But those cold foils that were in that really original first edition Flesh and Blood, if you ever look at the early sales of Flesh and Blood first edition Monarch cold foils, will make your head spin. You'll go, there is no way that those cold foils ever can sell for that much. but Flesh and Blood cold foils sold for $10,000+ huge chase factor. So yeah, it never had the MetaZoo sample card, and it never had that Disney Lorcana D23 event card, but it still had this first edition cold foils, which were really rare and everybody paid crazy prices for them. And then look at how all those prices retraced. You can go across so many different like trading card games in the very near term and see huge comparisons to all these. But people are going to let you know, as always, One Piece, it's different. Flesh and Blood, that was different. Disney Lorcana, that was different. MetaZoo, that was different. One Piece, this is the time it's going to be different. PK, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know shit about any trading cards. You don't know shit about Pokemon either. You know nothing about anything. And that's my final story. That's what I'm sticking to it. So, we'll see. We'll see how shit plays out, though. I've been on live chat the whole time. Yes. Okay, good. Pew, pew. 1 hour, 15 minutes. This is my PK daily Thursday live. I got to the bottom of the chat. I don't see anybody else writing anything. So, this is my sign to sign off. I've answered all the questions. But yeah, guys, listen. If you're watching this real time or after the fact, in the link of the description of this video is the monthly podcast, which is going to be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or if you look down in the comments below, there will be a pinned comment with a link to that. Put a reminder on. I hope to see you guys all there. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm happy we're bringing it back. It's been an 8-month hiatus. Can't wait. But as always, guys, appreciate every single one of you. Do me a favor. Hit that like button. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button. And as always, I'll catch you on the next video.